Hey, what's up? Husman here, and this week I'm gonna break down my latest release, Warriors, which actually has come out last week, last Friday to be exact. And before I dive deeper into the track, you might notice a little bit of difference because I got a new camera. I got finally my first Canon camera. I have been really happy with my Sony RX100 Mark II for like the last 1.5 years. There were a little few hiccups that I had, which before I couldn't see myself in the screen because you can't flip it around, and now I can see myself on the screen, which is nice. I can now put my microphone directly in the camera, and I also have, I think, which should be much better quality video. Maybe not in this one already, or maybe it will be already, but I need to get it better and find out all the settings. I tried a little bit around with some log footage, but I couldn't get it to work at the moment yet, so I just went with the standard settings. So with all the camera stuff out of the way, we're all here to talk about Warriors. At least I'm here to talk about Warriors, a track that I've been working on for I think the last 3 months or something, and that's when I signed it. And I'm really happy with the result. I'm even happier with all your reactions towards the track. So today's video is about that track, so let's dive into the computer. Not literally, you know what I mean. But first, roll the intro. So here's the project. I need to take in mind that I will look into the camera, not into the screen, but I will get to that. This is the project, and it's a pretty big project, I have to say, because it has been through a lot of versions, a lot of key changes, but this is the actual ending of the project, how it's being released like last week. Normally I would start with these kind of breakthroughs, like go from channel to channel, top to bottom, but I think it's much more logical to go from section to section. So start with intro drop, go to the break, go to the leads, go to the main drop, and basically form like a structure of how I came about this track. So the first thing that I want to look into is the intro drop, and the intro drop is pretty cool, I'd say, if I dare say so myself. So the key with this track was with the intro drop is that I was looking for, like a really dark sound, which is a dark synth sound. I didn't want to go for those heroic kind of sounds. I just want to look for something new. I didn't want to use too much super sauce in the beginning because I want to set a different feel for this one. So I found like this really cool, I call it a darkness sound, which does this. And the key with this one was really to dive into automation, dive into the frequency shifting of the auto filter, which really opens it up. And then, yeah, basically adding some OTT, sidechaining it, and then taking out the frequencies which we don't like for this one, sending it to a return channel, and then to add some reverb to it. And then you get something that really keeps moving all the time. Next thing that we need to make this really happen, we need some kicks and some basses, and the first thing that I'll show you are the kicks. It's actually 3 kicks. I have like a main kick. It on purposely doesn't have a lot of punch to it because we're gonna add that up, fill that up with the mid kick and the top kick. So we have the mid kick and the top kick. So actually the mid kick is also the mid high kick. It's like a bit in between. So if we combine those 3, get a pretty snappy kick, which I always like. Most of the time I like to keep my kick drums really short because then I can create my own bass lines, own sub basses, and give you the feeling that it's like a big sub kind of kick, which you hear in a lot of big room. But I really like to make those sub and bass lines separately from the kick, so I can have a lot of creativity going and I have a lot of room to change stuff around, especially when I use a lot of key changes in the bass lines. So next up, to go with this kick, we needed a sub, which is like a really simple sine wave. And if you combine these with the kick, So it's the important thing to keep in mind with this one is a sidechaining. It has a really specific sidechain setting, not like a specific parameter that you need to tweak, but more like I've really told it like, okay, I want this sub to play from here to here, and I want it to be gone where the kick is playing. I want to have it really gradually, which gives it that sucking effect, which probably a lot of you guys already know, but still, putting it out there. Then we have some real diverse combination of bass sounds. That's basically looking through splice and just combining all kinds of different layers, and I layered that one with this one. So if you combine that with the sub. Important note to take in consideration is remove the EQ and remove the low frequencies of those additional bass lines, because we don't want to have a lot of friction here in the low frequencies. Now the next one that we have, let's first play it around how it sounds, this combined. Pretty snappy. And then comes another main bass. Just to give that punch in the next section. It's every time on the first kicker of a new section. So I first stop the sub with a pitch down, so it pitches down, which gives it that effect that it's announcing a new section. So if we combine those three, a really cool combination. Really, I really need to. There I need to look, not there. I need to look there. But it's so confusing because I can see myself here. And focus, hold it together. This is an important video for all the producers, I think. Right. So what do we have still? We have some little basses that I added, some glitch effect and noise, and if you combine those you will get the whole layer together. So then moving on, it was time to introduce some new elements. It was time to introduce some melodies, and I really like to incorporate plugs. I like to incorporate vocal chops, some additional sounds to just move it forwards towards the breakdown so everybody can keep the tempo going. So the most easiest way to do this is add some drums, some rides, some claps, a loopy the bite, and then when you combine all of them, just gives it that additional tempo, that additional flow, and then sometimes keeping some sounds in the middle, sometimes some really wide. So for instance, this clap is really wide. So this way you can have a really balanced mix, which is pretty awesome. Now here I changed something in the bass line. As you can see, I added some little different notes to give it a bit more movement. I added some rolling bass lines to give it that again, the tempo building towards the break. And then comes the most fun thing that I think you guys have already heard in the track, and that's the vocal chop. Now, I get this question a lot, like how do I do those vocal chops? And it's all about finding a good vocal first. Like for instance, for this track, I found this really cool vocal. And as you can probably see, it's like 180 BPM, but that doesn't matter if you can warp it in a way that it fits the track. So what I basically did, I warped it towards a new channel and then can play around with it. I have my, you won't see it on the screen, but I have it on my Ableton Push here. So this is a great way to find new melodies and find new ways to bring this vocal to life, and not announcing everything yet of what's coming in the breakdown, but still having the listener to give them something to please the ears, at least some ear candy. And then the final thing that I added, except for the effects, is some plugs which are playing like those kind of weird plugs. Then I added some leads, and then lastly I added a little arp melody. And then if we combine all of those, plus the effect, just some white noises, some risers, again, building tension because you want to elude the listener to a new section. You want to tell them like, okay, we're gonna hurry this up now, and then we're gonna go to a break, then you're gonna get a story, and then we're gonna get to the drop. shabby, I'd say. And now comes actually the part which I normally start with when it comes to production, like the whole breakdown, the melody part. And I would normally start at the piano, but for this one I was really looking for something to fuel my inspiration, and it was this vocal that I found, which I talked about briefly in the beginning.
It's fall down, winter is coming,
And what I actually noticed whilst producing is that it has a really cool Game of Thrones reference, which is also coming this month. So that's a cool coincidence. Normally I would go really weird with, I would go really deep into making melodies and harmonies and pianos and synths. I tried that, I did that, I created some really big atmospheric chords and stuff, but then I thought perhaps it's cool to, because we have such a powerful building intro drop, to keep the tempo going when we come out of the drop, so to say. So I found this little bass pattern. So my idea was to keep the notes in the bass melody to a minimum, like the changes in there for the first 8 bars of the vocal melody. And in the second 8 bars we're gonna really open up the track with some harmonies, some strings, some pads. And that's what I actually went for. So when you can hear the difference, like it already makes such a huge difference when you add a little change in that bass melody. So I think it's a really great progression, like small and then just keep adding harmonies towards the ending of the breakdown. And the only extra thing that I added still was just a little, again, that little reference of the melody that's coming, just a little twinkle so the listener will know a little bit what's coming next, but not really.
when leaves fall down, winter is coming, worry, I lose my faith so far away, worry, worry,
So beautiful. Right, let's dive a little bit deeper in this one, shall we? My fellow music nerds. We're all nerds in the end. Let's see. Let's start. Yeah, I started with just a bass, like a break bass. Nothing too weird in that one. Just making sure you're finding some cool notes so you can really incorporate this really cool pattern, so it has some good emotion for the vocal. Yeah, nothing too fancy. And then comes the fun part. So we come out of that section, those 8 bar, where not a lot of movement is coming inside of the chords and there are no harmonies. So then I started with these strings. And then did the same thing, the same pattern, but then with some pads, which is just to give it a little bit more of that musical twinkle. And the last thing, I talked about this a few times in my videos, is the arcade plugin, which is just basically like a plugin variant of Splice. It has a lot of cool different sounds and patterns, so I found this. You can just look for it. It's the Inner Journey by Aura. It's like a sub part of the plugin. And the great thing with these is that it's really well, it has some kind of algorithm that it knows really well how to, even when things are in major and you want them to go in a certain key in minor, it will tweak it and use those sections which are in a minor key and then really fill up that spectrum. So combine that with the vocal and those pads. And then the next part, like the hands in the air moment, where we need to make sure that everything sounds as big as possible. I made a melody which sounds like this. This is the first lead, which is like the character lead, which has a really distinctive sound, and you can hear a lot of gliding, a lot of pitch bending. Then I layer it with this lead. The second one's a bit more of a rave synth. And the third one is more like a super saw. So again, character, dirty, clean synth, and then you get something that sounds a bit like this. And then send them to a reverb bus so we get a bit of that really big feeling. And then one more thing, that's probably the most important thing next to the sound choice themselves, is this compressor, which does like, it actually just does one thing. When I just mute it, it will sound like this. And I like to see it like, these three leads, they're standing on a section, they have to go through a door and they can't fit, so I just need somebody who just makes them lose the weight a little bit so that they can squeeze inside that small place. And then this compressor is really great. I talked in my previous video a lot about the glue compressor, but the 2A compressor from Waves does a similar thing, just a little differently, how it processes the compressed sounds. So without it, and with it, it really brings it together. Now we need for this one, I actually only need use the break bass again. I really like to keep the movement going and keep that vocal going a little bit. So I have an ending here with this. So I have this melody in my head like warrior. So I thought, let's bring this in there. Doesn't need to take away the intention from the leads, it really needs to help the leads forward and give it some atmosphere. So combine these. The next section, again, bringing back some harmonies, pads with a different kind of note structure, because we need to follow the leads now instead of follow the break bass. And then again, bring that vocal in. And some effects, which is again just some impacts and stuff, nothing too crazy. Let's go to the main part, the main drop. And the main drop sounds something like this. It's basically a combination of two synths. We have the really hardstyle kind of synth and the chord synth. Combine that with the bass line and the kicks, and then you get the drop. Since we've already been through the bass lines in the intro drop, we're just gonna look into the synths. So the first one is this hardstyle synth, and it's actually a screech, because if I play it solo, it actually has a lot of movement going on its own. So I needed to make sure that all the notes that I played that really follow up on each other, this one is overlapping this one and so forth. And because then I can keep the melody and the openness going. So I basically open the sound up in the cutoff on the first note and it ends on the last note. And the next one is again a super saw. With all my music, it's the most important thing is to have the melodies rack up on each other. So it's basically a combination of a question response. And then lastly, I think the last thing I want to show you guys, last thing that needs to be shown is like this little fill, which I quite like. And it's basically take all the elements together and arrange them in a way that they sound like a fill. So we have this sound, we have the bass, we have this chord, we have this bass, and then we have the vocal. It wasn't the easiest track to make, I have to say. I've been through it a lot of different versions with this one, but at the end I think came with a really cool conclusion, a lot of cool elements in there for this one, a little bit different than my earlier work, but I'm really going deeper into sound design, especially with my Patreon stuff, and I really like to do more in that kind of feel, to really try to create some unique sounds to use for the new productions and also for the packs and stuff. Now this track, Warrior, will of course be the Patreon featured track of this month. And one more thing, as you might have known, my album is coming out real soon, and want to give you guys a chance to win one copy. Send me your videos of you rocking out or dancing to Warriors, and I will pick a lucky winner who will get the album for free. So I'll be looking forward to hearing your cool dance moves, and I hope everyone enjoys the track. It's out now on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, wherever you normally get your music. And this was it for me today. If you like what I do, hit the like button. If you haven't already, subscribe, and I see you guys on the next video.